Walk us through those emotions.
It's very emotional. I mean, I think that, I wasn't surprised by her passing, but I was. And I think initially, and still, every time I see the film, I'm just so glad we have it. Toni was very private, and anyone who knew her and loved her knew that she was very private, and knew that there would never be an autobiography where she wrote her true story. So this is the closest we get. And I think it's very, it's like she's talking directly to you. The way Timothy films it, she's the only person who's looking directly into the camera, right? He films everyone else kind of to the side, and so she's talking to us, and it just feels like a real gift. It felt like a gift when I first saw it in June, and she was still alive, but every time I've seen it since her passing, it feels like more of a gift. So I just feel gratitude for it.
Do you think she was happy with the end result of this documentary?
So Timothy says, he did show it to her, and he says that at the end of seeing it, she said, I think I like her. So that would make her happy. And I sent her the day that it premiered down at the Film Forum. There was a sold out sign. So I took a picture and sent that to her, and I called her immediately afterwards and I said, you're getting a standing ovation. So I hope she would have liked it. She's that genius, so she would have found something wrong somewhere. But I think she would have appreciated it.
We heard in the film Oprah describe her work as being able to translate the depth of human pain and how that can be transformed into love. That is a gift. Why do you think, or what was your observation about how that emulated from her?
I think she genuinely believed in, and not in, my students get upset when they read her because she's so hard on romantic love. So, it's not a kind of easy, sentimental love story love, right? It's a difficult, hard-earned love. And it's very, all the great spiritual traditions talk about it. And I think that that's what is in her work. That's what she calls for. And she also calls for a kind of ethical behavior, that we treat each other with care. And toward the end of her life, she said that she wanted to make sure that she highlighted and celebrated goodness, because so often evil gets to be the star of the story. And so I think that the goodness, love, and care we can find at the core of all of her work. And we also see the consequences when someone doesn't get that, like Nicola in The Bluest Eye is not cared for in the way that she should be. And the consequences are her destruction.
We also heard in the documentary during the Civil Rights Movement how she was intentional in making sure those works documented the African American perspective during that time. Knowing her personally and knowing her professionally, do you think she was just as intentional with the novels that she wrote?
Oh, absolutely. She was intentional about everything she did. And she gave her all to it. She was in the classroom as a teacher and preparing for her classes, which is why she often didn't write while she was teaching, because she just didn't have the emotional energy to do all of that. So yes, with the editing, as an editor, nurturing the stories, nurturing her writers, and without question, with her writing, every single word counts. And has been, she says she wants the literature to be beautiful so that the work doesn't show to the reader, but you need to know that there was a lot of work. So yes, intentionality, by all means.
Did she ever say which one of her novels might be her favorite?
She never said, no. She never said that. She did say that, I remember she told me that she went back and reread Beloved. And she said, and it's kind of good. I like that. But I don't think if she had a favorite, I never heard her say which one it was. She was most off. Oh, I do know that when at Columbia has like a core curriculum. It's like the Western civilization curriculum, and students read Plato and start with Homer, and finally, there are only two women in that. It's Jane Austen and Virginia Woolf. So finally, Toni is in it. So the last novel that the students read is Song of Solomon. So I was so excited. I was like, you know, she was a classics minor at Howard. So I thought, look, this course, it starts with Homer and it ends with you, and you're in it. And she said, well, which novel? So I said, well, Song of Solomon. And she said, well, why not Beloved? Toni, please. But, you know, so maybe Beloved was her favorite. I don't know.
So as you're laughing, we watched the documentary, and you mentioned the filmmaker had her speak directly to the camera. And her voice, the tone of her voice, her laugh, it's another character in the documentary. Talk to us about that side of Toni Morrison, and that laugh in itself has a personality.
Yeah, one of the things I love about this is that you get to see her really as she was. And she had an incredible sense of humor. She had a raunchy sense of humor. She laughed all the time. And that the film shares that. And sometimes when someone writes about such heavy subjects, you forget about the laughter. But if you go back and read the novels, you'll see the humor in the novels as well. But you're so right, the laughter is always there. It's always part of who she was. I hear her laughter in my ears. And so I'm just thrilled that the film actually captures that. And I'll say something about the voice. It's a very distinctive voice. She is the best reader of her own work. I encourage people to listen to the audiobooks because for the most part, she recorded all of them, except for The Bluest Eye. And she loved the fact that The Bluest Eye, when it was initially recorded, was recorded by Ruby Dee. And she loved that. And then she went back, like in the last 5 years or so, and re-recorded audio versions of all of the novels, and to hear her read, because as she said, she was an actress too. That voice is just right. The voice and the laugh are amazing.
That's really good to know. I don't think any of us knew that she audio voiced all of her books, and that is a different experience for anyone listening to her work, especially for those young people who aren't as familiar with it. I have one last question before we open up the questions to audiences. Did you ever have a carrot cake?
You know, everyone asked me that. She stopped making carrot cakes. So no, I didn't have a carrot cake. And she said to me at one point, she's like, after her children got grown, she's like, I cooked every day, and so I'm not cooking anymore. So she asked me to cook for her occasionally, and I always was like, I'm not going to live up to the great cook, but so no, I missed out on the carrot cake.
Does anyone in the audience have a question for Dr. Griffin? We have one over here. Young lady in the glasses. And if you could stand up, please, and just tell us who you are.
Did you find it odd that her editor was a white man?
No, because I know American publishing. So it would have been highly unlikely that in 1970, that she would have had anyone but who
She
she
kept
had.
that one all the way through.
They were very loyal. He was her editor throughout her entire career, which is also rare, but yes. So she never, once he started as her editor, there was no change.
Any other questions? We have one in the back. Okay, and we have another in the front.
I was just wondering what her sons thought of the movie, and she was only married once. or whatever happened to him?
So that's her private life, and she never talked about it publicly. So she was only married once. She never married again. She had 2 sons. The youngest one, Slade, passed away some years ago, and Ford is still alive and around. And actually, there's another film that he helped produce called The Foreigner's Home, which is basically a documentary that follows a exhibition that she gets curated at the Louvre about immigration. And I would really encourage people to see it. Ford shot a lot of the footage there, and it's so prescient in terms of the kinds of debates that we have right now in our own country about immigration. It could have been made today or yesterday. So that's, he's an architect, her son, and who made his own film as well.
I just want to piggyback on that question. She asked a question that we all obviously are thinking. With Toni Morrison, when you say that was part of her private life that she never made public, does that mean you're not sharing it, or she didn't even share it with her closest friends?
She shared her thoughts and ideas, but everyone in that film, she was given a list of people, and she picked the people she wanted to be in the film out of the list. And I think that each one of us called her, because we're so devoted to her. We called her and said, hey, this guy called us about this film. Is this something you want us to do? And so I think that there perhaps are people, no, I doubt that anyone who got close enough to her to know her well would share things about her private life that she did not want shared. So, and I know that's true of me, of myself. Yes.
There was another question here on this side of the room. Okay, 1 second, he's going to give you the microphone.
Hello, thank you for being here. I'm Maria, and I was wondering, in the 70s, when she was the shepherd to all the, that particular time, the Black Power movement, and all the different people that were published as a result of her knowledge and her skill and her ability, did she ever talk about how she perceived herself during that time as an editor and still a writer, but as a shepherd, and still a young woman too? And not necessarily a mama figure, but yet she ushered in so much information, made sure that it was documented.
So I think that by that time, she realized she was, she'd written The Bluest Eye. She was working on Sula. Toni was also a little bit older than a lot of the younger voices. One thing to keep that doesn't make it in the documentary, for instance. When she taught at Howard, she taught Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture. And if you read, or Houston Baker, who was there, if you read his autobiography, he talks about having this gorgeous English professor who all the boys wanted to be in her class. And it's Toni. And so she was, Toni was 39 when she published her first novel. So she was a little bit older. She was very mature. And I think that she, the intentionality, she was not going to be an editor and it was just going to be a job and a professional advancement. There was a commitment to a certain project. And I think that she just always saw herself in that way. And was one of the things that I always admired about her is that she, for a Black woman of her generation, she was the most confident person I have ever met. I'm like, where did you get that from? Just absolutely certain of her abilities and of her gifts, and never wavered about that. So. Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else have a question?
Hi, Sherry Van
Oh, he's
Dyne.
going to give you the microphone.
Sherry Van Dyne. Do you have a favorite body of work or character? And if so, could you tell us why?
So actually, no, I don't. I mean, I love almost all of them. Like tomorrow at the Schomburg, there's going to be a read-in from noon to 5. And those of us who were participating were asked to select something to read. It was impossible for me. I walked around in circles for days, and finally decided to read from one of her lesser known novels because I love it. I love the novel Love, for instance. Song of Solomon, I quote like some people quote the Bible, So it would be hard to pick a favorite one. And I think it depends on when I read it and when in my life. Sula always has a special place because it was my first. But no, I don't have a favorite one. Some I prefer, but not a favorite. Do you have a favorite?
It's so funny. I'm actually, I'm rereading Love right now.
She says she's rereading Love, which is funny because you just said that was one of your.
Yeah, it's one of it's received the least attention and it didn't get the best reviews, but I go back to it and I'm like, wow. Even at her not best, it's still phenomenal, right? Yeah.
We do have another question in the back.
Good evening, hi, I'm Joan. I'm wondering, I know she was loved the world around, but did she ever go to the African continent, and if so, what countries? And what was her reception then?
I don't know. That is a question I don't know. I'm thinking that maybe not because she would have mentioned it, but I'm not sure. I know that when I have traveled to Ghana and to South Africa, I've seen, of course, her novels there. But that's a great question because I don't know the answer to that.
I think we have to end the Q&A at this point. My apologies. I know Dr. Griffin will still be here for a few moments to answer your questions after the Q&A ends, after the talkback ends. Dr. Griffin, is there anything or any final words that you have that you would like to leave us with?
First of all, thank you all for sponsoring this and thank you all for coming out on Friday night to see it. And I just hope that we keep reading her and keep encouraging young people to read her. And there's always a gift in reading and rereading Toni. So thank you.
Thank you all for coming out again. The piece of Diane is streaming online, so if you want to view it again, it's available on any of your streaming services. And again, on behalf of the Bergen County, New Jersey chapter of the Links Incorporated, thank you so much for joining us for another wonderful screening at the Teaneck International Film Festival. Have a great evening.